$5,000 over grass that was barely 2 inches tall. Yep, you heard that right. This woman, your classic neighborhood Karina, had completely lost it. When I refused to pay her ridiculous fine, she lost her mind and called the cops, thinking my criminal history would finally get me arrested and booted from her perfect little community. But what she didn't realize about my background was about to flip the entire situation on its head. Her desperate call to the authorities would end up being the biggest mistake of her life. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this story, it takes turns you absolutely will not see coming. Let me rewind to the day everything spiraled out of control because of 2 inches of grass. No joke, just 2 inches. I'd just gotten home after a 12-hour shift. I spent the whole day cramped inside a surveillance van watching drug runners push prescription pills across town. I was exhausted, but there it was, taped to my front door like some kind of warning flag. A bright yellow violation notice, $5,000 fine. Lawn exceeds approved grass height, measured 2.1 inches, maximum allowed, 1.5 inches. Oh, and it added that I'd be fined $500 every day until it was corrected. I stood there staring at that paper, trying to convince myself I was just hallucinating from lack of sleep. $5,000 over grass. What's next to fines for blinking too often? Maybe I should hire a full-time crew armed with rulers and magnifying glasses to keep the lawn police satisfied. Let me back up. My name's Alex Thompson. At the time, I was supposed to be an out-of-work IT technician, scraping by and hunting for jobs. That's the story I told. Anyway, in reality, I was a 35-year-old undercover detective tracking down whoever was illegally selling stolen prescription meds online. The irony wasn't lost on me. There I was, a cop chasing down criminals, getting slapped with outrageous citations by the neighborhood hoe queen who clearly thought she was some sort of law enforcement herself. My assignment had brought me to Sunset Palms, a quiet retirement community in Florida with around 200 homes, most of them filled with elderly folks reliant on expensive medications. Someone was targeting them. I was sent in to find out who, but first, I had to survive the turf war over my front lawn. I went inside and fired up my workstation. Monitors lit up with data, drug prices, pharmacy logs, conversations between suspected dealers. It was an expensive setup, all right. And yeah, you could see it right through the window. Not exactly what you'd expect from a guy supposedly unemployed, but that's what made the cover believable. Here's the thing. When I was 19, I got busted with a tiny amount of pot, juvenile record, later sealed when I became a cop. But if someone ran a casual background check, I'd look like a guy with a troubled past trying to go straight. That made me a perfect candidate to go undercover in a case like this, a broken bar, and also exactly the kind of person that a nosy, paranoid HOA president would immediately suspect. Now let's talk about Barbara Martinez, 45, used to be a nurse, the kind of woman who probably measures her cereal by the gram. Her house was directly across from many a pristine lawn, perfect flower beds, security cameras covering every inch of her property. She'd been watching me for weeks through binoculars, scribbling in her notebook like she was tracking the FBI's most wanted. New guy has pricey electronics, odd hours, says he's unemployed. I'd a broken bar. She was suspicious. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. My story didn't add up, but she had no clue what I was really doing. One afternoon, while I was deep into monitoring pill sales online, something outside caught my attention. Barbara was walking into Mrs. Johnson's home, medical bag and clipboard in hand. Now, Mrs. Johnson was 78, diabetic, heart issues, spent over $600 a month on prescriptions. Through the window, I watched Barbara give her pitch. "I'm helping neighbors manage their medications," she said sweetly. "As a former nurse, I know how to spot expired meds and dangerous combinations." On the surface, it looked helpful, compassionate, even, but the way she was counting pills, snapping photos, and logging everything into her tablet felt off. It looked more like inventory than a wellness check. Then it happened. She held up a bottle of blood pressure meds, frowned, and said, "These are expired. Dangerous. I'll dispose of them for you." She pocketed the whole bottle, 30 pills, easily worth $200 a, and swapped in a nearly identical bottle of vitamin B pills. Mrs. Johnson was touched. "Barbara, You're saving my life. These meds cost more than my groceries." Then unbelievably she paid Barbara $50 for the service. I watched, stunned. That wasn't helpful. That was outright theft disguised as kindness. 2 hours later, Barbara came back. "Got you a generic version through my medical network. Same med, half the cost." Mrs. Johnson paid her another $100. I was almost certain the pills were stolen from another neighbor earlier that week. It was evil, ingenious. Barbara had created a system: steal from one elderly resident, sell to another as a discount, and pocket the money. People loved her for it. Mrs. Rodriguez thanked her for saving $200 on diabetes meds. Mr. Williams said Barbara's help stopped his daily confusion. They trusted her. She was slowly replacing real meds with fakes and they didn't even realize it. That evening, I saw her make the rounds to 6 more homes. Every person paid between $50 to $100 for her so-called service. Barbara probably told herself she was doing good at helping people afford treatment, but what she was really doing was running a 6-figure black market pill operation that endangered lives. I overheard her on a call later. "Got 150 heart pills, 200 diabetes pills ready to go. Same quality as last week." She was talking about stolen meds like she was selling tomatoes at a farmer's market. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Barbara showed up at my door, personally delivering a notice that my find had escalated. I opened the door. Behind me, my computer screens were still lit up, broadcasting clear signs of a police investigation in progress. She didn't seem to notice it yet. Barbara's strained eyes, honed over years of nursing, picked up on it instantly. That wasn't job hunting on my screen. It looked exactly like law enforcement data. I slammed the laptop shut and quickly threw out some excuse about researching IT gigs, but it was too late. The damage was already done. Barbara didn't need a badge to know how to read people. Her nursing background had clearly taught her how to study reactions under pressure. I could see it in her face. Her mind was already connecting the dots. My nervous body language, the expensive tech setup, and that sealed federal record she somehow got her hands on. In that instant, both of us realized the other posed a serious threat. I was uncovering a calculated scheme involving the theft of medication from the elderly, and she was realizing that her quiet suburban empire might have a cop living right across the street. She had discovered something about me that changed the game. And the scary part? I didn't yet realize she was already thinking several steps ahead. The real question wasn't whether she'd use my sealed juvenile record against me, it was how far she'd go to protect her twisted little business. The next morning, I got on a secure line with my handler, Detective Sarah Martinez. "Sarah," I said, pacing my living room, still fuming over the absurd lawn fine, "I found our suspect, Barbara Martinez. She's stealing prescription meds from elderly residents and reselling them. She's clever," I added. "She poses as someone helping with medication management, swaps out real prescriptions with vitamins, then sells the stolen meds to other neighbors as affordable alternatives. No one even realizes they've been robbed." Sarah didn't miss a beat. "That lines up with the surge in pill trafficking we've been tracking. Can you get us hard proof?" I glanced out the window at Barbara's picture-perfect home, every corner covered with security cameras. "I'm working on it," I replied. "But we've got a problem. She's digging into my background and found my sealed record. She suspects I'm law enforcement." Sarah reassured me the record was legally protected. A sealed means sealed, but something told me Barbara wasn't your everyday busybody with too much time and a clipboard. She had skills, and she was using them like a pro to guard a very well-run criminal network. So I adapted. I installed discreet surveillance equipment around my property and began collecting footage of Barbara's neighborhood rounds. To the casual observer, I just looked like a bored guy with too much free time, but behind the scenes, I was quietly assembling a federal case against a woman who was literally endangering lives for profit. The irony was brutal. I was a cop undercover as an ex-con, chasing a criminal pretending to be a community angel. Then Barbara escalated. What came next felt like full-blown psychological warfare. Weaponized HOA violations designed to break me. Day 1, $2,000 fine for neglected lawn care. Day 2, $1,500 fine for leaving my garbage bin in my own driveway. Day 3, $1,000 penalty for unauthorized vehicle presence of my own car, legally parked, on the property I was renting. Each fine came loaded with intimidating legal jargon and demands for compliance within 24 hours. They read like threats from a prosecutor, not a homeowners association. I remember thinking, what's next? A fee for standing on my own porch? Maybe she'll invoice me for breathing HOA air without permission. But I wasn't confused. This was strategy. Barbara was trying to make my life miserable enough that I'd leave voluntarily. That would solve her problem nicely. On day 4, a city inspector showed up with a report about health code violations. Day 5, an anonymous police tip claiming suspicious behavior at my residence. The irony? I was indeed acting suspicious, but for reasons Barbara could never guess. Day 6 brought a letter from HOA lawyers threatening a lawsuit that could wipe out my annual salary. It was methodical harassment, a pressure campaign designed to get rid of me before I unraveled her entire operation. What she didn't realize was that every move she made only sharpened my resolve, because when you try to trap a cop who has nothing left to lose a broken bar, it usually doesn't end well for you. Meanwhile, the neighborhood itself was becoming a battleground. Barbara had split the community right down the middle. Team Barbara versus Team Alex, with a few silent neutrals watching from the sidelines. Her supporters were mostly elderly residents who truly believed she was helping them. Mrs. Johnson insisted, "Barbara's the only reason I can afford my meds." Mr. Williams added, "She's protected us from being scammed. I trust her completely." And Mrs. Rodriguez, her loudest advocate, claimed, "Barbara's nursing skills saved my husband's life." They had no idea they were standing behind someone who was slowly robbing and poisoning them. That part hit me hard. On the other side were younger families and professionals, people who saw right through her manipulative facade. Emily Smith, a local school teacher, became my strongest ally. Barbara's bullied 3 different neighbors this year. She's the problem. Mike Foster, a contractor, would just shake his head. The guy minds his business, works from home. What's the issue? Then there was Jenny Davis, an actual registered nurse. These HOA fines are outrageous. $5 grand for 2 inches of grass. That's not enforcement. That's bullying. Having a real nurse challenge Barbara's supposed medical authority felt like a small win, especially since Barbara loved to parade her former profession as a shield. "I can recognize troublemakers," she told people. "That man exhibits all the signs of surveillance and suspicious activity." Until finally, Emily had enough and snapped, "Barbara, being a nurse doesn't make you the neighborhood police." While the community drama played out like a soap opera on the street, I kept my head down and focused on the mission. I gathered evidence relentlessly of photos of Barbara entering homes with medical bags, video footage of her pocketing medications and leaving behind vitamins, audio recordings of seniors thanking her for saving them money, and the clincher, screenshots of online pill listings that perfectly matched the exact medication she'd taken from those same homes. The pattern became unmistakable once I saw the full picture. She was deliberately targeting residents who used high-cost prescriptions. She'd skim off 28–30% of their supply, just enough to go unnoticed, to replace the stolen pills with harmless lookalikes, and then flip the stolen meds online for roughly 60% of their retail value. She was pocketing about $2,000 a month in service fees from grateful residents, plus another $6,000 from online resales. Barbara's operation was netting her nearly $100,000 a year just from selling stolen prescriptions online. From a law enforcement standpoint, it was an impressively efficient scam, but morally, it was horrifying. This wasn't just about theft. Barbara was actively putting lives at risk by swapping out life-saving medications for harmless supplements. People like Mrs. Rodriguez were suffering real medical setbacks, her blood sugar spiraling out of control because Barbara had replaced her insulin with vitamin B. Mr. Williams, his blood pressure was at dangerous levels, so he'd unknowingly been taking calcium pills instead of his prescribed medication. And Mrs. Johnson's heart condition, worsening, because she was swallowing vitamins where heart pills should have been. Barbara wasn't just stealing, she was slowly, silently harming people while they thanked her for helping. The situation reached a boiling point when Barbara appeared at my door again, this time holding what she clearly thought was her trump card, a $3,000 fine for noise disturbances. I opened the door and stared at her, confused and annoyed. "What noise? I haven't left the house today." Her expression was ice cold. "Your activities are disruptive to the community's peace. Multiple residents have voiced concerns." I almost laughed in disbelief. "What am I breathing? My employment is existing now a violation?" That's when she dropped the mask and went for the throat. "You say you work," she said, "but you don't have a consistent schedule. You use expensive equipment, and your background has discrepancies." There it was. She had found my sealed juvenile record. My heart jumped, but I forced myself to stay composed. "Everyone's got a history," I said calmly. "I freelance. Not everyone clocks in at 9 a.m. These are IT projects, so work comes in waves." But Barbara wasn't done. "Then show me. Prove what you're working on." I stared at her. "You're not entitled to that. This harassment has to stop." But she wasn't backing down. "I'm calling a community meeting. Let the neighbors decide if you should stay." My instincts screamed. A public confrontation like that could jeopardize the entire undercover op, but walking away would give her full control of the narrative and I wasn't about to hand her that win. I could see her plan coming together: paint me as a threat, rally the residents, and pressure me out. What she didn't know was that just hours earlier, I'd uncovered evidence that would destroy her entire scheme and expose something even worse. The community meeting she was planning to shame me. It would end up deciding more than just who belonged. It might finally reveal who was truly dangerous. Echo Stories fam, if you live in an HOA community, let us know in the comments. This next part gets intense. Barbara prepared for that meeting like it was a military operation. Her goal? Convince the neighborhood that I was the real threat. She had photos of my work set up, a spreadsheet of every HOA fine she'd issued me, and testimony from 15 elderly clients, all of whom were unknowingly funding her criminal ring. Her narrative was airtight on the surface: an outsider with a sketchy past, hiding behind expensive gear and odd hours, versus a trusted former nurse protecting her neighbors. I watched her coach her supporters like witnesses at a trial. This man could be an insurance investigator trying to shut down our medication assistance program. His background check revealed a sealed record, prior criminal conduct. Mrs. Johnson, clearly emotional, pleaded with her, "Barbara, we need you. We can't afford our meds without your help." The manipulation was masterful and infuriating. Meanwhile, I had to prepare my defense carefully. I couldn't reveal I was law enforcement. I had to look like a regular guy, unfairly targeted by someone abusing her power. I compiled documentation, copies of the absurd fines, notices filled with threats, and clear patterns of harassment. I hoped the younger residents would see through the lies, but I knew, one wrong sentence, and my entire cover could collapse. Right before the meeting, Emily Smith approached me quietly. "I think the way Barbara's treating you is wrong," she said. "Mind if I speak up?" I was beyond grateful. "Please do. These fines are ridiculous." Having one person in my corner made all the difference going into what felt like a tribunal. The community center was packed that night. Nearly 50 residents filled the room, murmuring and curious. Barbara stood at the front like a judge about to deliver a verdict. "Neighbors," she announced, "we have serious concerns about a new resident. Mr. Alex Thompson has shown disturbing behavioral patterns that threaten the safety and medical well-being of this community." She had even set up an evidence board, CSI style, photos of my workstation, a timeline of HOA violations, testimonies from her elderly clients. Then she hit them with the bombshell. His background check revealed a sealed federal criminal record. The gasps were immediate. Eyes turned. I felt the weight of the room shift against me. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly, clearly. "I do freelance IT work. I work odd hours because I serve clients in different time zones. That equipment? It's how I make a living. Yes, I made mistakes when I was young. That's why the record is sealed. I've moved on. I've paid for it." Mrs. Johnson stood up, shaken. "Barbara helps us survive. If this man is trying to interfere with our medication help, and he has a criminal history," then Emily stood up. I could have hugged her right then. "With respect, Mrs. Johnson, Alex has every right to live here peacefully," she said. "Barbara issued over $15,000 in fines, most of them over things like grass height. That's not protection, that's control. And dragging up sealed records? That's completely out of line." Mike Foster chimed in from the back. "He pays his rent, follows the rules. Having a past doesn't make someone a threat today. Barbara, undeterred, clung to her last defense. As a former medical professional, I recognize investigative behavior. This man jeopardizes the health and privacy of our elderly residents. His record makes him unsuitable for this neighborhood. Then Jenny Davies of the Real Nurse stood. Barbara, being a nurse doesn't give you the right to spy on neighbors, access private records, or run them out of town. What you're doing is serious, and where's your proof? I could see it in Barbara's face. She hadn't expected pushback, not like this. For the first time since I'd arrived, the community was beginning to question Barbara's authority. Her iron grip was slipping just a little, and she could feel it. The panic in her eyes was barely visible, but I'd been trained to spot subtle signs of stress. Barbara was realizing that the tidy empire she built on fear and trust was showing cracks, and that terrified her. Then came the moment that nearly blew everything wide open. During the heated exchange, Mrs. Rodriguez slipped up badly. "Barbara's medical experience saves us thousands on our prescriptions," she said proudly. "She knows exactly what we need and gets it for less." Emily Smith caught it instantly. "Wait. What do you mean gets it for less? I thought she just helped sort out doses." Mrs. Rodriguez stammered, trying to walk it back. "Yeah, I mean she helps explain dosages and finds generic alternatives." Barbara swooped into cover. "I offer medication education, helping seniors avoid harmful drug interactions and find affordable pharmacy options." "But I saw my opening. That's practicing medicine without a license," I said firmly. "Only licensed doctors or pharmacists can legally recommend prescription changes or distribute medication." For a split second, Barbara's mask slipped. Her fury flashed before she composed herself. "I'm just trying to help my neighbors afford basic care," she said. "Some people want to turn compassion into a crime." But Jenny Davis, the community's real nurse, stepped in. "Actually, Alex is right," she said calmly. "Making medication recommendations or providing prescription drugs without a license and clearance is illegal." A murmur rippled through the crowd. For the first time, people were questioning Barbara's authority, and this time, the challenge came from a medical professional. Barbara's loyal elderly followers still stood by her, but younger families were exchanging skeptical glances. She was losing control. The meeting ended with the neighborhood divided, her reputation shaken but not destroyed. Not yet. It wasn't until people began leaving that Barbara showed me just how far she was willing to go. She cornered me near the exit, voice low, eyes sharp. "You're destroying these people's only lifeline," she said. "They need me." I looked her dead in the eye. "Do they? Or are you just exploiting their fear?" Her voice dropped to a whisper, full of venom. "You have no idea what you're meddling in. Some people need discretion when it comes to how they get their meds, and your record proves you understand how to work outside the rules." That was no longer just intimidation. That was a threat. "Sounds like you're threatening me," I said, my tone flat. Barbara smiled coldly. "It's a warning. This community was peaceful before you came. Maybe it's time you moved on, before your past comes back to haunt you." As she walked away, Emily came up beside me. "Be careful, Alex," she said quietly. "Barbara's not used to losing control. She's dangerous when she's cornered." I thanked her for standing up for me, but my mind was racing. Barbara had crossed a line tonight. This wasn't just petty power tripping anymore. This was personal, calculated, desperate. She wasn't just trying to run me out. She was starting to think about how to erase me entirely. And given her medical background, she'd know exactly how to do it without leaving a trace. What I didn't know was that Barbara had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to wait for another meeting, or another round of fines. She was planning something final. In her twisted logic, removing me was an act of mercy. To her, I wasn't just threatening her lucrative schema, I was endangering the lives of 15 elderly people who genuinely believed she was their savior. And in Barbara's eyes, that made me expendable. She did her research, too, using her HOA access. She'd pulled my rental file. That's where she discovered my shellfish allergy, severe, life-threatening, and well-documented. Just a trace of it could put me into anaphylactic shock. Her plan was terrifying in its simplicity. Community potluck this weekend. Barbara brings a dessert secretly laced with a shellfish extract. I eat it, collapse, and die of a known allergy, a tragic accident. She'd even positioned herself as the first to act ready to administer CPR, play the hero. She knew exactly how to make it look like she tried to save me. Witnesses would see her as the compassionate nurse doing everything she could, despite our public feud, a fatal allergy, an unfortunate reaction, and a well-meaning neighbor trying to help. Perfect, clean. In Barbara's mind, she wasn't committing murder, she was protecting her neighbors from a threat. One she had convinced herself didn't deserve a second chance. She prepared the dish carefully, ensuring it would trigger a violent reaction but wouldn't be obvious. I didn't suspect a thing at first. She hovered nearby the entire event, smiling, chatting watching. She needed to be close enough to act fast, or to make it look like she did. A phone call was placed shortly before the potluck. I later learned about it through surveillance records. "Everything's ready for the event," she said quietly. "I've got what I need." The voice on the other end warned her, "Be careful. This can't come back on you." She was already 2 steps ahead. Her contact had warned her to be cautious. If this plan backfired, the consequences would be severe. But Barbara wasn't concerned. She was committed, determined to see it through. That Saturday night, the Sunset Palms Community Center buzzed with cheerful chatter as 35 residents gathered for what they believed was just another friendly monthly potluck. Barbara had gone all out, laying out a carefully curated feast centered, of course, around her signature seafood pasta salad. That dish was supposed to be my death sentence. She played her part flawlessly. "Alex, so glad you made it," she said warmly, all fake smiles and welcoming gestures. "These events are great for building community. You have to try my family's famous pasta salad." She made a point to serve me personally, handing me a special portion of one she'd laced with concentrated shellfish extract. Her timeline was methodical: serve it at 7:15, mild symptoms by 7:30, a full-blown reaction by 7:40, and by 8 o'clock, I'd be dead. All in front of the neighborhood. Barbara hovered near the exit, conveniently close to her emergency medical kit. She was planning to look like a hero when I collapsed, rushing in with CPR and faux concern. The entire thing was calculated to appear like a tragic accident. But here's the thing about being undercover: paranoia becomes your instinct. And mine was screaming. After weeks of open hostility, public threats, and absurd fines totaling $15,000, this sudden warmth, it reeked of manipulation. I played along, pretended to take bites, nodding politely, all while discreetly disposing of the food, hiding portions in napkins, dropping scraps into the trash during drink runs. I wasn't taking a single risk. Meanwhile, the evening flowed smoothly on the surface. Emily Smith commented on how great it was to see everyone mingling. Mrs. Johnson raved about Barbara's cooking. Mike Foster praised the turnout, but I wasn't eating a thing. Barbara, on the other hand, was watching me with laser focus. Every breath, every facial twitch, every second I didn't show symptoms, her anxiety grew. By 7:35, nothing had happened. She approached me, eyes gleaming with concern, dressed in sweetness. "So, what did you think of the pasta salad? Special family recipe. Really unique ingredients." I forced a smile. "Tasted great, thanks for sharing it." At 7:45, I was still standing, chatting casually. No reaction, no signs of distress. Barbara's worry turned to frustration. "You didn't eat much. Want seconds?" I patted my stomach. "Already stuffed. Maybe next time." But I could feel her tracking my every move, constantly checking the time. 8 o'clock rolled around. I was perfectly fine. Barbara realized her plan had failed, and that's when she pivoted to plan B, just as dangerous. She accidentally spilled wine on my shirt and insisted on helping me clean up in the kitchen, a private place, probably where she'd stashed a backup poison or another method. I declined. "No worries, I'll change at home." She was fuming, but couldn't press without drawing suspicion. I walked out of that potluck alive but fully aware that I'd just dodged a very real, very deliberate murder attempt. Back home, I pulled out the napkins where I'd hidden the pasta. Years of police work had taught me to always preserve potential evidence. Under a magnifying glass, I spotted tiny shell fragments and a strange, oily residue. My emergency allergy test kit, always on hand, confirmed it. Multiple shellfish proteins, concentrated and lethal. This wasn't accidental contamination. This was a calculated attempt to kill me. I called Detective Martinez immediately. Barbara Martinez just tried to murder me. I need backup and an evidence team now. Her voice sharpened. Are you absolutely certain? As certain as I've ever been. She accessed my medical records. She knew about the allergy and deliberately poisoned the food. This is no longer just fraud, it's attempted murder. Martinez didn't hesitate. We're moving to arrests. Your cover's blown anyway. The investigation had escalated fast. I was now the survivor of a failed murder plot. Later that night, I returned to the community center. Barbara was inside, cleaning up with barely concealed rage. Shame Alex had to leave early. Hope he enjoyed the meal, she said to Emily Smith. He seemed fine when he left. Emily replied casually. Barbara forced a tight smile. Just wanted to make sure everyone had a lovely evening. From the parking lot, I watched her dispose of the leftover pasta slada, placing it in a sealed container. Not the trash. She wasn't just tidying up, she was destroying evidence. Like a pro. Then our eyes met through the window. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. She knew I had figured her out, and I knew she wasn't finished. Barbara stood there, staring at me, calculating. The poison had failed, but she had one more move left. One that could bring my own department to her door. But she didn't know the trap she was walking into. The very weapon she planned to use against me would be the one to bring her down. After the failed attempt, Barbara made the most desperate 911 call of her life. This is Barbara Martinez, HOA president at Sunset Palms. I need an officer dispatched immediately. We have a suspicious resident engaged in possible criminal surveillance of elderly neighbors. The dispatcher asked for details. Barbara's tone was careful and precise. He owns advanced recording equipment, watches people's homes, takes photos of private activities. He claims to be unemployed, but his behavior suggests something criminal. Background check shows a sealed federal record, and he's had previous charges. She was playing her final card, hoping my old juvenile record would get me removed, arrested, anything to stop me. Officers Rodriguez and Davis responded. They already knew Barbara. She'd called about a dozen other neighbors in the past. Rodriguez assumed it was just another HOA drama. Barbara again, probably mad about lawn signs or something. But Barbara thought this would be different. This time, she was certain the police would take me down, ending the investigation and saving her empire. From her window, Barbara watched the patrol car arrive, thinking, finally, his past is going to take him out for me. Barbara thought she was finally about to eliminate her Alex problem for good. She was convinced that my sealed record would shift the officer's attention away from her crimes and straight onto my past. But what she failed to realize was that she was about to commit the single greatest blunder of her criminal career, reporting a cop to the cops. When Officers Rodriguez and Davis knocked at my door, my training took over. Stay calm, be cooperative, keep the cover intact unless it was already compromised. Evening, officers, please, come in. I welcomed them inside and showed them my standard home office setup and nothing more than IT gear and tech tools I actually used. I explained I worked remotely as a freelance tech support specialist, often dealing with clients in different time zones, which sometimes kept me up at odd hours. Officer Davis, referencing the complaint, asked about the surveillance equipment. I kept my tone easy and professional. Just computers for video calls. Sometimes my screen's visible through the window. Nothing suspicious. Both officers seemed satisfied. My calm, cooperative demeanor was doing its job. Then came the ID check. Rodriguez asked for my licensee standard protocol. I handed it over without hesitation, but inside, I braced myself. My juvenile record had been sealed and expunged, but anything could happen with old data in law enforcement systems. What happened next was Barbara's worst-case scenario. Rodriguez ran my ID through their database. The system returned a profile that caused both officers to go wide-eyed. They read it silently. Sealed juvenile record, a drug possession at age 19. Record expunged. Current occupation, law enforcement. Status, undercover. Assignment, active investigation. Note, contact Detective Sarah Martinez immediately. Rodriguez looked at Davis. Davis leaned in, voice low. He's UK undercover cop. Rodriguez immediately called it in. Dispatch, need urgent connection to Detective Martinez. Priority response. Active investigation. Meanwhile, across the street, Barbara watched everything from behind her curtains. The longer the officers stayed, the more anxious she became. Something wasn't right. Why weren't they arresting me? What was taking so long? She didn't know she was watching her entire criminal operation begin to collapse. When Martinez confirmed my identity to the officers and explained that I had been placed undercover specifically because my juvenile record made me the perfect candidate, the dominoes started falling. I wasn't just any neighbor, I was an investigator, and now the predator had just called the police on the hunter. Rodriguez looked genuinely apologetic. Officer Thompson, we had no idea. We've responded to multiple calls from Mrs. Martinez about you. I saw my chance to push the investigation forward. She's been issuing bogus HOA fines for weeks. Now I understand why. She's behind a prescription drug theft scheme targeting seniors. The local harassment report just exploded into a federal case. From her window, Barbara watched the shift unfold. The police talking to me like a colleague, the radios buzzing with urgency, the long conversation that didn't end with handcuffs. When the officers shook my hand and nodded respectfully, it hit her like a freight train. He's not a suspicious resident. He's an undercover cop investigating me. Her pulse skyrocketed. Sweat broke across her forehead. Breathing quickened. Barbara's clinical training recognized the signs. Panic. She called Maria, her longtime co-conspirator. Something's gone horribly wrong, Barbara said, voice shaking. I reported Alex. They're treating him like one of their own. Maria didn't sugarcoat it. Jesus, Barbara, you called the cops a broken bar on an undercover cop? You're done. Barbara snapped into triage mode. She began frantically destroying evidence, shredding files, dumping stolen meds, wiping computers, deleting financial records. She even used medical-grade disposal techniques and chemical neutralizers to erase every trace of her illegal activities. She'd underestimated the network among law enforcement. Rodriguez shared more with me. She mentioned helping seniors manage their prescriptions. Seemed irrelevant. Absolutely, I replied. That's how she covers her thefts. Davis added, claims she's just volunteering. Says she used to be a nurse and offers it as community service. That connected the final piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just opportunistic theft, it was a structured, ongoing operation. Rodriguez noted, she's called us on 5 different people in the last 2 years. Always some medical or safety issue. I nodded. Classic diversion. She draws attention away from her crimes by creating false alarms. The local HOA spat had officially escalated into a federally linked drug theft ring. The officers departed with polite waves and casual conversation of business as usual, except for the part where the supposed suspect was actually their fellow cop. I returned inside, acting normal in case any neighbors were watching, but inside I knew. Barbara was backed into a corner. She now understood the full weight of her mistake. I had legal authority, police protection, federal backup, and I'd survived her attempt on my life. Barbara was down to her last option. The math was simple. Undercover cop plus drug theft operation plus attempted murder equals life behind bars. Her response was swift and desperate. She began packing emergency supplies, a hidden stash of $20,000 profits from the stolen medication trade, forged IDs she'd prepared for scenarios just like this, medical gear, survival basics. She was planning her escape fast. Barbara packed her SUV with clinical efficiency. Among her escape supplies were $20,000 in cash from her pill operation, a stash of fake IDs, basic survival gear, medical supplies for emergencies, and a laptop secured with encrypted links to her criminal contacts. She was preparing to disappear the same way she had vanished from Arizona 3 years earlier. Her final calls went out like controlled detonations across her network. Maria, it's confirmed the feds are involved. Shut everything down, Dr. Peterson. Eliminate every trace of our supply arrangement. Burn the files. Tommy, delete my number. You never got anything from me. She was executing a complete operational takedown with the same ruthless discipline she used when replacing life-saving meds with placebos for her elderly victims. Her self-assessment was clinical. 3 years of staying hidden gone in a flash. Thanks to one undercover cop, I should have finished him when I had the chance, she muttered, fury simmering beneath her breath. Should have never brought in his colleagues. Starting the ignition, Barbara took the same exit route she'd once used from Phoenix to Jacksonville, then to Miami, and eventually toward Mexico. But this time, she knew the stakes were far higher. Federal law enforcement was already watching. As she pulled away from the home where she'd spent 2 years building her fake life, she gave one final glance at the house, the quiet street, the carefully laid trap she thought she controlled. Calling the cops on a cop, her last and deadliest mistake. What she didn't realize was that the 911 call she had made had triggered far more than a local visit. At that very moment, databases were spinning up, cross-referencing identifiers, running facial recognition scans. Somewhere inside a federal office, a long cold case was heating up fast. As soon as the officers departed, I got on the phone with Detective Sarah Martinez. "Barbara Martinez is our primary suspect," I said. "Request immediate surveillance approval." "Walk me through the operation," she replied. My tone was controlled, but the anger in my words was unmistakable. "She's been stealing medication from elderly residents during so-called wellness visits, replaces the real drugs with vitamins or sugar pills, then sells the prescription meds online. We're estimating $100,000 a year in stolen pharmaceuticals." I paused. "And she tried to poison me." "Food laced with something." "Almost worked." "That shifted everything." "That makes it a federal crime," Sarah responded. "Attempted murder?" "How many victims total?" I pulled up the list I'd compiled. "Minimum 15 confirmed." "She's replacing critical medications, insulin, hard meds, blood pressure pills with useless supplements. It's a miracle no one else has died yet." Sarah didn't hesitate. "You've got full clearance. Gather every bit of proof you have. We'll need it all for prosecution and federal coordination. I'm also running her ID through national databases. An attempted murder suspect with this kind of method probably has a longer record." I sent in my full report of videos, surveillance footage, financial records, photographs, victim statements, and documentation of the poisoning. Once uploaded, the data immediately triggered automated queries across multiple federal systems. What happened next went far beyond what I'd expected. The FBI's facial recognition software scanned her driver's license photo and flagged a high match and 89% similarity to a wanted fugitive named Rebecca Foster. Agent Jennifer Hayes was on duty when the alert hit her desk. She clicked through the details and froze. Rebecca Foster, former nurse, operated a nearly identical pill theft ring in Arizona from 2019 to 2021. 3 senior citizens had died from substituted medication. Over $200,000 in stolen pharmaceuticals. Attempted poisoning of a police investigator. Disappeared mid-investigation. Active federal warrant. Agent Hayes ran the geographic analysis. Rebecca Foster went missing from Phoenix in October 2021. Barbara Martinez appeared in Florida a month later. Same pattern, same methods, same woman. Hayes immediately picked up the phone. "Detective Martinez, your suspect isn't just some local criminal. You're looking at Rebecca Foster. She's been on the run for 3 years. She's killed before both civilians and law enforcement." That single confirmation activated a full-scale federal task force. Within hours, the fugitive division of the FBI was involved. The DEA came on board. Local authorities and federal agents began coordinating. 15 agents were now on the hunt for the woman who had just tried to poison me over a dispute about lawn care. What began as a neighborhood nuisance had become a manhunt for a serial killer targeting the vulnerable and the people trying to protect them. Meanwhile, Barbara was executing her escape with the same precision she had once used to fake trust and deliver poison. She torched her client records in a backyard fire pit, dumped stolen meds into toilets, crushed hard drives with medical instruments, shredded financial documents, cleaned digital traces off every phone and device. Her final messages to her accomplices echoed the collapse of her network. "Mario Feds confirmed. Shut down everything. Dr. Peterson delete every document. No connection between us. Tomia erase my name. We never met." But it was already too late. She was dismantling a criminal operation that spanned multiple states with the same precision and methodical care she'd once used as a nurse. Barbara knew exactly what she was up against. 3 years of secrecy gone in an instant, all because of one undercover officer. "I should have ended him when I had the chance. Not tipped off his team," she muttered bitterly. Firing up her SUV, Barbara retraced the same escape route she'd used years before: Phoenix to Jacksonville, Jacksonville to Miami, then south to Mexico. But this time, things were different. Federal forces were already closing in. Agent Hayes was directing the full-force response. Rebecca Foster is a high-level threat. With a medical background, she's capable of sophisticated crimes. She's taken the lives of elderly victims, nearly killed an officer, and has access to lethal substances. Agencies launched immediate efforts. Highway patrols were alerted. Florida airports placed under surveillance. Border Patrol was on high alert, and financial systems flagged for activity. Warnings were sent across the medical community in case she tried to steal more drugs. Local police joined federal agents to secure the neighborhood and protect any residents who had been her victims. I shared what I knew. She knows she's compromised. She will run, and she will kill again if it helps her escape. Elderly residents under threat were placed under police protection. Meanwhile, Barbara was racing down I-95 toward Miami, scanning law enforcement channels with a medical-grade emergency scanner from her nursing days. Police chatter confirmed her real identity was out. All units be advised that Rebecca Foster, alias Barbara Martinez, is driving a white SUV, armed and extremely dangerous. Officer fatality risk. Hearing the alert, Barbara understood just how far things had escalated. They know who I really am, she whispered. It's over. At a highway rest stop, she abandoned her SUV and switched to her backup plan just as she had prepared years earlier. She moved essential supplies onto a motorcycle she'd stashed in that very lot, changed into a new outfit, used medical makeup techniques to alter her appearance, destroyed her old IDs, and activated documents under her real name, Rebecca Foster. She made a final call. This is Rebecca. I need to cross the border tonight. Cops know everything. Attempted murder charges. Jesus, Rebecca, came the reply. You tried to kill another cop? The heat's gonna be insane. But she hadn't succeeded, and that failure made things far worse. Federal agents soon found her SUV. K-9 units tracked her, sent to the motorcycle garage. Surveillance teams picked up her new vehicle heading toward the port. The Coast Guard got involved. Helicopters scanned major escape routes. Rebecca now understood the scale of the manhunt. Aircraft in the sky, boats in the water, surveillance at every exit point, unlimited resources. 24-hour sweep. I'm running out of time. She made a desperate call to an underground medical connection. Dr. Rodriguez, I need a place to hide. I'll work off the books. It's serious murder charges. But time had run out. Federal agents were tracking every move. She had used these tactics before, but this time the authorities were prepared. At dawn the next day, a coordinated team of 15 agents surrounded the underground clinic in Miami. Rebecca Foster is inside, Agent Hayes confirmed. She's medically trained, dangerous, and has killed before. Extreme caution. Inside, Barbara quickly assessed the situation. Her clinical instincts told her resistance was pointless. Full perimeter lockdown. Overwhelming force. I'm done. She called her lawyer one last time. It's Rebecca Foster. They found me. 3 years on the run. Over. When the FBI entered, their voices were steady. Rebecca Foster, you're under arrest for drug trafficking, elder abuse, attempted murder, and evading federal capture. Barbara gave up without a scene. I understand the charges. No resistance. Agent Hayes nodded. Smart choice, Foster. Let's keep this simple. She was read her rights and led out to the federal vehicle. The manhunt was finally over. I called a meeting with the entire community. There's something you all need to know about Barbara and me. Standing in front of my neighbors, I told the truth. I'm Detective Alex Thompson. I've been working undercover to investigate prescription drug theft. Barbara Martinez is actually Rebecca Foster, a fugitive who stole medications, sold them illegally, and attempted to poison me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Johnson was in shock. That's not possible. She helped us with our medications. Emily Smith's eyes widened. You're a cop? Mike Foster put the puzzle together. So the surveillance a broken bar was real? I broke it all down. She swapped your meds for vitamins during her visits. Sold your real prescriptions online. When I got close to catching her, she tried to kill me at the potluck. Nurse Jenny Davis finally saw the connection. That explains the poor health outcomes. They were never getting real meds. Mrs. Rodriguez collapsed into tears. My diabetes has been out of control for months. I thought it was my fault. A broken bar. I looked her in the eye. She replaced your insulin with vitamin B. You were never getting proper treatment. The mood shifted from disbelief to horror. Mr. Williams shook with rage. She was killing USA for money. I confirmed the worst. She's the same nurse who killed elderly patients in Arizona before coming here. My juvenile record turned out to be the perfect cover. Dr. Kim, the physician evaluating Barbara's victims, delivered her report. Many showed signs of non-compliance, but they were following orders. Their medications had been replaced. The findings were grim. Mrs. Johnson's heart condition had worsened. Mr. Williams' blood pressure was spiking. Mrs. Rodriguez's diabetes was critical. 3 people had to be hospitalized. We launched a victim support program. All medical bills covered, prescriptions restored, ongoing health care arranged. The FBI added it all up. Rebecca Foster stole $120,000 in medications, endangered 15 lives, and nearly killed a police officer. She was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison, ordered to pay $300,000 in restitution for medical bills and emotional trauma. Civil lawsuits recovered more damages via the HOA's insurance. Detective Martinez recommended my promotion. You prevented more deaths and helped take down a dangerous predator. I was promoted to detective sergeant, now specializing in elder abuse and medical fraud. The community began to heal. Emily Smith became the new HOA president. First priority of protecting our residents, not bullying them with fines. New policies were enacted, background checks for all HOA officers, medical license verification, transparent community oversight, grass fines capped at $25. Ironically, the neighborhood became more desirable. Buyers were drawn to its now ironclad safety. Barbara's house, it became a community garden in memory of her victims. 6 months later, we held a neighborhood BBQ. Mrs. Johnson approached me. You saved our lives. We're so thankful you survived. I grinned, just doing my job. Though those $5,000 grass fines were highly motivating. Emily Smith laughed. We've dropped those insane rules. Now it's $25 maxa and you've got to be growing a jungle first. Mike Foster raised his drink. Best undercover sting ever. Caught a killer and fixed the hoe. My next assignment. Another retirement community, this one in Arizona. Rumors of financial fraud. Emily raised an eyebrow. Undercover again? I nodded. Seems I've got a knack for this. Who knew my old record would help save lives? That BBQ was the perfect send-off for Detective Alex Thompson, the neighbor who took down a killer hiding in plain sight. As I packed for Arizona, I smiled at the irony. Sometimes, the best justice doesn't come from courtrooms. It comes from someone with a sealed record and a lawn just a little too tall. Ya story's justice had been served. The community was safe. And Rebecca Foster would spend the rest of her life remembering how a petty grass fine led to her downfall. Because sometimes karma doesn't knock, it kicks the damn door in.